Memory transcription subject, Slanek, Venlil civilian. Date, standardized human time, February 5, 2137. The awkwardness between Marcel and I hung in the air, though the human forced some small talk. My exchange partner had stayed on the quarantine station for longer than any other patient, even after the infected were all cleared to leave. I didn't pry into his affairs, but the mention of moving to Venlil Prime hadn't sat well with his fiancée, Lucy. She was growing exhausted of the redhead running around the galaxy, and was less than thrilled at the prospect of leaving Earth behind. The Zerulean doctors had passed along rumors that they heard Mark yelling into his holopad. The scarred predator had reported my crime to the United Nations, and admitted it when I came to speak with him after reading Frankenstein. Marcel thought he was doing me a favor, by qualifying his report with me being mentally ill and with unknown variables from the Venlil news in the archives. The fact that my species were once fierce warriors unsettled me. We were twisted into something that I didn't comprehend. The instinct suppression program had stirred something that changed me back. Feeling like a science experiment gone wrong, the moral of Frankenstein landed. I am the monster. A deformed, angry man, and I know what I must do. I interrupted the human's current train of conversation, which was regarding rainforests on Earth. You can't even look at me. What do you want me to say, Slanek? I'm, well, upset at my own people as much as you, Marcel growled. When I notified UN Command, they claimed that the video logs from your helmet cam, went missing. Then, they pull some under-the-table stuff with the Venlil military to give you a quiet, honorable discharge. It's bullshit. I didn't want a discharge. I want to go back to the war. No. You told me you read the book, and you understood. I did, I finished it weeks ago. You're still not ready to talk. Slanek, who was the one dodging every question of substance. I don't need to hear any more lies from you. You just want me to let it go, but we can't rewind the clock on our friendship. I trust very deeply, and you broke that. The only reason I'm coming with you is because I want you to get help. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I rose to my feet, as the near-vacant train stopped near my hometown. You think I damned myself? I heard your interpretation of the book. What's the point if I've already fucked everything over? His hazel eyes glistened. I couldn't bear to watch you go off the deep end. I loved you, the brother I never had, Slanek. I still do. But this hatred is festering inside of you, and it's turning you into someone I don't recognize. Everything I did because I cared about you. Because I didn't want you, or anyone like you, to get hurt. No matter what you think of me, I'm still here when you need me. I'll make sure you're taken care of on Venlil Prime. The Predator's stare intensified, and he placed his hands on my shoulders. Marcel turned me around forcibly, inspecting me with a look that screamed alarm. As bitter as I sounded right now, it offered slight comfort to know that the human still cared about me. The way I regarded him was like the brother I lost. Perhaps my dependency on him was from fear of loss. The prospects of the Terran having no choice but to cling to me, due to the effects of the disease, were enticing. This was an alien world that he'd need to be coaxed into. Unfortunately, my calling is much more urgent. The things that were done to me, to all Venlilkind, must be reckoned for. I'll try to set Marcel up for success. How you said that, it was like you're not coming back. Are you going to hurt yourself? His voice had become much softer, and he shook his head emphatically. It doesn't have to end like this. You made a mistake, I won't sugarcoat, but it doesn't have to define you forever. I'll help you. I straightened my ears in earnest. I'm not going to self-harm, that was a dark assumption. I just need to go somewhere else to sort out my issues. Of course, that's exactly what you should do. I'm, really happy to hear that. See? I did understand. I'm a monster, and I need to do something about the things that made me one. The Colchians. The farsal. The history being burned from the ledger. I wouldn't put it like that, but yeah. Marcel declared, with a bit too much enthusiasm. It takes a brave person to seek help. You got this, buddy. Breaking away from the human, I led him down the sidewalk toward my childhood home. The cerulean row house with crumbling paint had character and eccentricity, as my mother put it. The last thing I wanted was to speak to my parents, knowing that they would be ashamed of the predatory creature their child had become. However, Marcel needed a place to stay, and I couldn't take care of my business until I knew he'd be looked after. My plea to the universe was that my folks weren't anti-Terran bigots. Swallowing my hesitation, I ordered Marcel to wait at the bottom of the stairs. During my deployment on Silas, that had been when I recognized the onset of what any normal Venlil would call predator disease. Onso cautioned me never to repeat that phrase again, but it would be tough to hide how much I changed. The yodel had been correct about us being fired up before the Federation got us. Stealing my swirling nerves, my claws tapped the buzzer. As seconds passed waiting, flight impulses tugged at my mind for the first time in a while. The door creaked open, before the elderly female Venlil behind it spotted us. Her transition to throw her arms around me was near instantaneous. I stood in numb silence as my mother sobbed into my shoulder. She stepped back at last, cupping my chin with pure joy. The guilt threatened to consume me, especially as a hint of fury tugged at her ears. I noticed her pupils dart briefly to Marcel, though she ignored him. Slanak. You haven't contacted us in months, she hissed. We had no way of knowing if you were dead, and we saw you on the news with him. The government told us you moved to Earth during the raid, then we only found out you were alive by hearing you shipped off to Silas. I flicked my ears. I'm sorry. There's some things I didn't want you to know. Do you have any idea what you put us through, by deciding what we should know? Come here, human. Marcel shifted on his feet. Are you sure, miss, shit, you guys don't have last names. I don't want to call you Miss Slanak. Call me Jency. I obviously know who you are, Marcel Fraser. Thank you for bringing my son home. Sure thing. It was harrowing out there, Jency. We've been through a lot together. But we don't need to talk about that, I interjected. You're more calm around Marcel than I expected. I play mahjong with my human co-workers a few times a season. They have such wonderful gossip. My mother gestured toward the hallway. Please, come in, both of you. Your father is grabbing groceries, but he'll be back. I pinned my ears back with discomfort, as Jency dragged me inside. The human removed his shoes at the doorstep, not wanting to track dirt inside, I presumed. Marcel hadn't been happy when I got mud on his couch back on Earth. How I wished I could rewind the clock to those days. This wasn't where I belonged anymore, and I needed to make a quick exit before my mother realized her son was an unlovable monster. You want Jency to remember you as the thoughtful, well-mannered young man you once were. Not as this thing. Listen, I'm not going to be staying long, I hissed. Jency issued an adamant no-tail signal. Nonsense. I'm going to fix you boys a nice lunch, and you're going to tell me everything you've been up to. I don't want to, I can't. Mark, can I have a minute to talk to her, alone? The human nodded, and turned an inquisitive gaze on my mother. She pointed with her tail toward the living room, at the far end of the hallway. I watched as the Terran faded from earshot, grateful for the knowledge that their hearing was subpar. What I was about to impart to my mother wasn't something I wanted Marcel to be aware of. It had crossed my mind to leave him a note, but that might induce him to interfere with my plans. Hurt flashed in Jency's eyes. How can you leave so soon after being gone for so long? Do we not matter to you at all, Slanak? Look, I don't think I'm coming back, Mom. Don't ask why. There's things I have to do. I'm here for Marcel's sake, because the Kolshians cured him and he has nowhere to go. Please, if you still love me, take him in and care for him. That's my only wish. I have nothing against your friend, but asking me to let him move in, with no set time frame, is a big ask. I don't know him, and he's not my son. You are. Pretend Marcel is your son. He'll be a better son than I ever was. Please, I beg you. Nothing is more important to me than knowing he's safe. We'll help him get back on his feet, at least for a little while. Why don't you just stay a little longer, Slanek? You can't run off saying I'll never see you again. Tell me what's going on with you. It's not important. Whatever happens next, it wasn't your fault. I ducked back out the front door, shaking off her efforts to tug me back inside. I'm sorry, Mom, I really am. Tell him I'm sorry too. Without any further hesitation, I found myself sprinting as far away from home as my crooked legs would carry me. Memories of playing with my brother kindled my own tears, and the sobbing turned hysterical as I reminisced on my adventures with Marcel. The human believed I was getting help, but I knew it was too late for anything to be done. He hadn't wanted me to stay, given his claim that our friendship couldn't be restored to its former state. Jency would ensure that he adjusted to Venlil Prime, and didn't end up destitute on the streets. It's okay, Slanek. You were always a liability to him, he's better off without you. They all are. My lungs burned, forcing me to slow from my breakneck run. The merciless sun beat down overhead, its reddish glow permeating my bushy fur like it was punishing me. I forced myself to keep moving. I couldn't afford to miss the train and allow Marcel or Jency to chase after me. No matter what happened next, I hoped neither thought it was their fault. There was nothing that could make me regret my time in the exchange program, and meeting my gentle, vegetarian predator. I shimmied inside a train car just as the doors were closing, and collapsed on a bench with a heavy sigh. The knapsack on my back had felt light until now, since it contained only meager belongings. I slid it onto the floor in front of me, allowing myself a short break from hauling it around. An automated voice declared that we were heading to O'Real, a farming village. I hadn't checked where the transit was headed before hopping on. I could keep riding until it reached a large city, one where I could find a spaceport. It gave me time to iron out my plans. Goodbye, Marcel. I won't disappoint you anymore, I whispered, bowing my head in mourning. My paws retrieved the Frankenstein book he'd given me. I understood the exact parallel that was being drawn by the story. It was laughable that I'd thought that it was an allegory for humans being the unnatural monsters, when the novel first inspired me to pity them. The unholy, mix-and-match abomination, created by scientists that thought they could play God, who was then driven mad by the world around him, it was me. It was always me. Marcel implied as much when he implored me to find the text's lessons. What I needed to do to fulfill my destiny was spelled out in the crisp pages. There was only one way to extol the rage surging in my heart at a deserved party, just as I had done with that arrogant Kolshian scientist. The execution had felt righteous and satisfying, a welcome release, until Marcel returned. If I was embracing my role as the monster, that meant I must kill my creator, after they lost everything they loved. With Nikona's empire crumbling due to Terran interference, I was content to skip the first step and go for the jugular. Nikonas, and by extension, the rest of his Kolshian underlings had done this to me. They were the reason for all of my suffering and deformities. The Commonwealth chief must fall by my claw, if I were to feel better. Nobody else should suffer as the Venlil had. Those tentacled freaks shouldn't have the opportunity to harm anyone ever again. I was going to find my way off this world, and find someone who could smuggle me into Alpha. When I lorded over Nikona's cold, lifeless corpse, after watching the light dim from his eyes, then his punishment would be complete. Justice will be served. It might not set my heart at peace, but I don't care. It's not about me, it's about them and what they've done. Humans could never slip through Alpha's security to get close to Nikonas, but the Kolshians didn't take us modern Venlil seriously. There had to be a way to use stealth to my advantage. I stashed the book back in my knapsack, and set my mind to devising a plan. Attaining a weapon was the first order of business, though I had that figured out. I imagined an exterminator's office would give me one, if I claimed a dog was following me. How else could I protect myself from a predator? It was a shame they wouldn't hand out flamethrowers without guild membership. A standard firearm would have to be enough to put Nikonis down for good. If this was the last mission I undertook, I accepted my fate. Perhaps the greatest incentive was that, if I succeeded, nobody would ever jeer Venlil as weak again. My focus turned to blocking out all memories of the human that was once my friend, and I committed myself to avenging both of our species. Memory transcription subject, Governor Tarva of the Venlil Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, February 5, 2137. While the United Nations had no intention of gunning down Sci-Fi, human snipers had their sights trained on him in case the Arxer tried anything. I imagined their watchful presence was for the purpose of putting the other delegates at ease, as much as they could be with a carnivorous predator mounting the stage. The chief hunter had to slouch to reach the microphone, even after raising it to its full height. Fearful expressions marred the prey delegates' faces, with reptilian eyes aimed in their direction. Everything that stirred our instincts about Terrans was there tenfold in a gray. This was the face that haunted our nightmares, the visage of the cruelest race in existence. A ginger-and-white doser leapt off Sci-Fi's head, and curled up on the podium right in front him. The delegation from Milo's refugees hissed for the rodent to be removed, trying to signal her to come to them. The tiny herbivore who'd appeared alongside the Arxer showed no interest, yawning to express boredom. Many humans looked befuddled by her nonchalance, except for Zhao, who seemed to have encountered this doser before. Sci-Fi flared his nostrils, and a handful of delegates fainted. The Thafki ambassador was out like a light, while Gojid Minister Kiri swooned and folded like a lawn chair. Primates rushed over to try to rouse the downed diplomats, and I turned to survey Noah's expression. The Terran ambassador had taken on an exterior of alarm, as though something awful occurred to him. His unmasked eyes raced across the room, scanning every Venlil. The glint in his brown irises was of personal concern. I gasped with my own worry, when the pieces clicked in my brain. Ambassador Williams was looking for Glim, and his pupils settled on a tail sticking out from under a dresser. "Oh no," Noah murmured. Seeing an Arxer must be traumatic for Glim. They tortured and penned him for years. He watched them eat other Venlil in front of him, daily. The human pushed his way through the crowd, who were preoccupied with the most threatening predator in the room. Glim was catatonic under the dresser, shaking like a leaf. He was gasping out the words, "not cattle," before diverting to repeating the numbers on his brand. The Venlil rescue promptly vomited all over the floor, and Noah dragged him out to prevent him from choking. The astronaut shared a glance with me, before rushing the former cattle Venlil from the room in his arms. The terror in Glim's eyes seemed to pierce right through me. How long had he been under there? Since he heard us discussing whether to allow Sci-Fi to speak? The chief hunter either didn't notice or didn't comment on Glim's departure, as he cleared his throat with a thunderous growl. More of the delegates cowered, and unlike the human's apologetic demeanor, the Arxer seemed irked. He hissed something into the doser's ear, worried gazes dotted. The audience, as many assumed the grey was leaning in to chow into her soft throat. The rodent chittered back with an angry expression, and made a dramatic gesture at the microphone. Sci-Fi sighed in surrender. "Hello. I do not expect to be granted access to your meetings or to join your association. I merely recognize the pragmatic concern that we have a common enemy, and per the information provided by Human Intelligence Services, Betterment and the Federation are two sides of the same knife. While I cannot offer any recompense for the ills you have suffered, know it will end with me and my rebellion. After everything you've done, you want us to work with you?" Nuela, the crocodile representative, challenged. "There are crocodile here? Humans are so soft, and their willingness to speak with you, after what you did to Earth, reflects the shortcomings of their empathy. You are the face of the extermination fleet, and I do not wish to speak or work with you. Oh, so if you challenge your government, after leading atrocities your whole life, you're fine? The crocodile were used and thrown away, without K knowing we were omnivores. If I had that information when voting on Earth's fate, things would have been different, Gray. If I had an alternative that did not get me killed, things would have been different. You had a choice, the ability to speak up without losing your head, and you didn't. Why? I don't owe you any explanation, you abominable monstrosity. I didn't vote for you to get your nasty eyes on the best pickings. Oh sorry, I mean, speak to us. We'd never fight alongside someone as unscrupulous and repulsive as you. Silence. Secretary General Zhao bellowed. I expect all guests of the sapient coalition to behave with the decorum and rationality befitting professional diplomats. We aren't the Federation. We don't conduct debates and decide issues by lobbing insults, no matter our personal feelings. If Noah were here rather than tending to Glim, he would have remarked on how difficult it had been to get a word in edgewise, with the constant interruptions during his office speech. The jeers rang in my ears as fresh as yesterday. Cupo had led the heckling, casting skepticism on the notion of arboreal eyes and suggesting humanity would turn on us. The Mazik was much more partial to Noah now than in those days, and hadn't hesitated to shield him from Koji. However, the large mammal had voted against allowing Isif to speak. I imagined he was having difficulty holding his tongue. Humanity should be appreciative of Cupo's attempts to be respectful of the forum, knowing that his true thoughts likely aligned with Nuela's rhetoric. This debate could turn heated in a hurry, and I wasn't sure I trusted an Arxer to rein in his temper. The Terrans couldn't let this powder keg erupt into flames. Yodel Ambassador Lalo curled his lip in defiance. What is it you want, Arxer? I seek to ally where beneficial to weaken our enemies, and I am willing to attack specific targets in exchange for resources. Primarily, I seek a non-aggression pact. This war should not continue in the event we both triumph over our adversaries, yes? This death cycle must cease, Isif retorted, flicking his tongue. So you'll what, stop raiding us and eating us? Zerulean Prime Minister Braylon spoke up. I don't see how we could ever believe that you wouldn't relax our guard, just to launch a sneak attack. Do you not recognize that you have the most shrewd, resourceful, relentless species on your side? A humanity with actual time to perfect their craft, it will be suicide to go up against them in a few years. Look how rapidly they advance, they learn, they innovate. Similar to your feelings, I have no guarantee that you wouldn't see my kind extinct, as soon as we try to isolate ourselves. I know you think we do not deserve to exist. You don't. Nuela squawked. You're a bunch of bloodthirsty demons. The archives will show you it was not always so cut and dry, bird. Now shut your beak. We cannot be friends, obviously, but I would hope, many generations from now, our descendants might be civilized with each other. That each of our factions may regard the other's lives with some minimal value. Would that not be better than this cursed existence? A Dosur diplomat leapt around, held aloft by a Mazik, trying to draw attention. You're keeping one of ours as a hostage on this very floor. Who is she, and what have you done to her? Ah, this is Felra. I rescued her from Milo, and we are friends. She is silly and irritating, but does she look like a hostage to you? I feel like her hostage. I made Scifi come here, Felra squeaked, a prideful note coloring her voice. Speaking at the summit was my idea. I told him he should try to make peace. Isif was never taught how to have empathy, but I'm certain he has a good heart. For the record, nobody made me do anything. I believe this is a delusional, fruitless endeavor, and the humans, much like all of you, don't want me here tarnishing their reputation. I am surprised I was allowed to speak to you. Then why did you come here at all? Mazik President Cupo finally challenged. To test how much you could manipulate us? My reason for coming is somewhat to express my remorse over the role I played in your historical atrocities, because it is my sincere feeling. Also, practically, I cannot overcome the Dominion alone, so it is a strategic move to express the benefits that could be gained from a reluctant partnership. Zhao touts the idea of victory, at all costs, yes. The cost is for us to tolerate each other. What if I don't want to tolerate you? Then that was the expected outcome. I merely will ask that the United Nations pass along back channels to communicate with me, if you desire. Each state may reach out, should they be interested in any non-aggression pacts. Thank you for granting me an audience, I will not take any more of your time. Zhao gave a hand signal to the UN soldiers, who escorted the Arxer from the room without hesitation. I considered the speech I'd just heard. It was surprising that the carnivore had been able to iterate his full pitch, and have his points listened to by prey. Isif's rhetoric mirrored my own ideas, recognizing that friendship was impossible, and suggesting a pragmatic alliance instead. Risking open collaboration before the election would be political suicide, but perhaps the Venlo Republic could accept his proposal off of the public's radar. Isif's stunt proved that an Arxer can act civilized, and communicate more than hungry threats. The question is if this demolished humanity's chances of securing support for the coalition. The majority of species had consented to the Arxer's brief admittance, and supported the Terrans in the face of mockery. Secretary-General Zhao seemed keen to get the proceedings back on track. Serious entreaties were needed at this moment, rather than festivities. It was a shame, since I sensed how desperately the humans needed a happy moment to cling to. The guests had enjoyed the earlier messing about to a certain degree, judging by how they'd cheered Noah's face-planting stunt on. This was supposed to be an event calling for unity, and celebrating the diplomatic tribulations Earth had overcome. As the UN's leader rushed to mingle with leery diplomats, I committed myself to winning over anyone who was put off by the Arxer's visit. A part of me was darkly curious if others were considering his offer, though the cynical side of me doubted it. After how the peaceful Terrans were mistreated time and again, I had little faith in the collective to pass fair judgments. I padded up to Mazik President Cupo, bracing myself for damage control. I was impressed with how you handled yourself. The humans had a tough situation on their hands there, they need Isif militarily. You seem to understand that. Qua owes our continued existence to humanity. Though I vehemently disagree with treating that monster as a person, the UN still has my full support, Tarva, Cupo replied. I see what you're trying to do, and it's not necessary. The Terrans simply can't believe that predators are evil, because they are not evil. It's understandable. Not accurate, but roll with it. Perhaps there's another good predator race out there? Like Zhao said, sapients choose what they are. Sure, but blood-drinking killers are a lot more likely to choose evil by default. There's a disconnect between that practice and good motives. Even the humans would agree, and that's why they've bettered themselves through science. Their curiosity brings out the best in them. Well, I'm glad you noticed how humans adore science and find meaning in their surroundings, I dodged. Sarah would be happy to hear that her field is appreciated. Please, excuse me. That was one name to check off the list of potential discontented parties. The slightly misguided Cupo's support hadn't been jeopardized by our unwanted guest. I noticed a dejected Nuela slinking into Zhao's circle, with her indigo wings folded unhappily. The crocodile had her body turned away from the human. I wondered if she was afraid of him, after he lobbied for the Arxer's introduction. Scurrying off from my private conversation with the Mazik, I joined the Secretary-General's circle to offer support. The crocodile, of all species, have no right to challenge humanity. I was surprised, and perhaps a little displeased, that they were invited here, when Earth's gaping wounds are still fresh. I'm glad you're all right, Telekin, Zhao was saying to the Thafki diplomat, who looked groggy after fainting. I'd love to get back on track discussing a Thafki settlement, under our protection. Somewhere you can restore your society, without being targeted for attack as soon as you plant your roots. Telikin slumped his shoulders. Before you came along, there were 12,000 of us left, because of the Arxer. The Federation leaders made sure no one came to help us, but they didn't helm the raid. The Greys did the deed. Had I known the Arxer was coming in advance, I never would have allowed it. Humanity understands how sensitive this is to you and your people. All I want is to help the Thafki flourish. You're important to us personally, enough that we never gave up on calling you our friends. Please, in turn, don't give up on humanity because of this one hiccup. Everything with you ends with our representative dying, the Arxer showing up, or a planet getting attacked. You're right. We've failed to keep people safe. This incursion was a lapse in our security, for which I am unspeakably sorry. We can do better, humans aren't quitters. Your survival and your freedom are what we fight for, alongside our own. Nuala flapped her wings. Human. I know you may not want to speak to me. No, please. I brought you here as an olive branch, not to hold earth over your head. I don't wish to condemn your species. While few would agree with me, I think the fact that crocodile were the first victims changes our perspective. This is a fresh start for us all, or, it can be. I just wish to apologize for how I phrased my words to the filthy Grey. Not that I regret that, I realized how my nasty eyes comment could be taken the wrong way by humans, who also have binocular eyes. Your eyes aren't nearly as bad as theirs. Zhao coyly lifted his visor for a second. Are you sure about that? The crocodile froze, stuttering for a few moments. And no. Worse in person, videos don't do the W-hole looking right at you, justice. What I meant to say is that yours are unfortunate, and theirs are nasty. Is that so? The Secretary General issued a gruff laugh, fitting his visor back over his eyes. For what it's worth, many humans get anxiety from other people staring at them. It can be most unsettling, and I understand that your temper flared with Isif. All is forgiven. Nuala shook her wings out, an attempt to flush the fear chemicals from her body. Telikin had looked away when Zhao started to remove his visor. The Thafki didn't want to risk passing out twice in the span of an hour. I couldn't help but snicker at the frightful diplomats, along with the amused, human-accustomed Lalo. The Yodel was having a full belly laugh, and I shared his view on the situational absurdity. Gazing into a human's eyes was intoxicating, a way of peering through a window to their soul, especially when it was Noah's loving gaze. For anyone who knows the Terrans well, it's impossible to be scared of them. Seeing Lalo project that sentiment, I can tell the Yodel will be an easy vote to join the coalition. The positive outlook was that no parties outside the Durertan Shield had walked out or become hostile to humans, which was a victory under the circumstances. The real test would be how many committed to join as a member state, when the vote took place in a few days. Outlining any diplomatic technicalities, discussing a vision for a post-war future, and confirming signatures to the various treaties from would-be entrants were next on the agenda. For some planets, FTL comms would need to patch them into legislatures at home, to vote on document ratifications. I was hopeful that humanity would succeed in its mission to found a better league of planets. No species had fought harder, with unrequited kindness, to gain friends among the stars. A binding agreement to cement that humans were not alone in their quest for peace would mean the world to me. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get all the future notifications of new episodes, it really helps out the channel. And I will see you on the next one. Cheers.